Okay. Good evening and welcome to Crawley Borough Council's council-owned Neighbourhood Parade panel, Scrutiny panel, meeting of 8th of December 2020. I'm Councillor Bob Lanza, Chair of the panel. The agenda for this meeting has been published and is available on the Council's website. Members of the public and press are able to watch this meeting live, but there will not be a public question time at any Scrutiny panel meeting. Before I ask invitees to confirm their attendance, I ask that they please ensure their mobile phones are switched off or turned to silent. Their backgrounds are plain or nondescript and that they will not be disturbed during the meeting. Please also ensure that your microphones are turned off unless speaking and cameras are turned off unless you are speaking or requesting to speak. When invited to speak, please turn your camera on, unmute yourself and check your screen is surrounded by a red box before speaking. If members direct any questions towards the officers present, these officers will be invited to respond. Can I first please ask the officers supporting the meeting to introduce themselves, giving their names and job title. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jess Tamplin, Democratic Services Support Officer.
Heather Girling, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening. My name's Karen Hayes and I'm Head of Corporate Finance.
Hello, I'm Sue Bader and I'm the Asset Manager.
Thank you, colleagues, for introducing yourselves. We'll now be taking introductions together with items 1 and 2. So I'm going to ask first of all, are there any apologies for absence? I believe there are none tabled so far this evening. Item 2 is disclosures of interest and whipping declarations. So I'm going to now ask all the panel members, when called upon, to confirm the ward that you represent, if you've got any declarations of interest to make, and also if you've got any whipping declarations to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call upon councillors to declare any interests or whipping declarations, for the record, we do now have a vacant seat on the panel. Councillor Guiderer has decided that due to his involvement and his associations with Tilgate Parade, he has a prejudicial conflicting interest in being a member of the panel. So he's felt it best to step down. He will be replaced with another councillor in due course, who will be confirmed in time for the next meeting. So we will now take introductions. So could I please ask Councillor Ayling to turn on her camera so you can introduce yourself.
Hello, my name's Marion Ayling and I'm a councillor for Bewbush and Bullfield North. I don't have any declaration of interest or whipping declarations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lanza.
Hello, I'm Councillor Bob Lanza, representing Pound Hill South and Worth Ward. No declarations of interest and no whipping declarations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lunnan, please.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Tim Lunnan. I'm a councillor representing Broadfield Ward. I have no declarations of interest and no whipping declarations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, you could turn your camera on.
Good evening. My name is Councillor Duncan Peck and I'm the ward member for Maidenbower. I have no declaration of interest to make and no whipping declaration of interest to make either.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues, for introducing yourselves and for attending the first meeting of this scrutiny panel. So item 3 on our agenda is the introduction to the review and setting the scoping framework and the timescales. So you will have with your agendas a scoping framework, which I will lightly introduce, because I'm going to assume you've taken a look at it or you've got it in front of you. So the section 1, the terms of reference, is referring to how the neighbourhood parades are currently being managed and how our duties are being discharged, and fundamentally what might be the options for change in the future. The second section refers to the reasons for the review. Where Crawley Borough Council owns 11 neighbourhood parades with about 140 units across in total. And we have a policy called the property strategy, which has been active and since May 2004. And so it would seem appropriate to review that now, not least, of course, because of the economic and social impact of COVID-19, to see what we might be able to do differently, what we might be able to do better. And the key objectives of the review, I mean, it's important to note that the neighbourhood parades are community assets in the sense that they provide retail and other outlets for our neighbourhoods, which means that people can go to those places perhaps on foot or cycling instead of using the car. So in that sense, they're community assets, but they're also a very important property asset as well. And the tenants there, they pay rent, which are an important contributor to the maintenance and running of council services. So we look at the operation of the policy in both contexts. And so I want to emphasise that although there's been a great deal of publicity about neighbourhood parade rents, this review is much wider than that. It looks at the way we determine the composition of those parades, the types of units that are present, the footfall, the maintenance regime, what happens if improvements are made to some of the retail outlets and how that might affect rents. So part 2 is evidence gathering, and in the report you'll see references to a range of documents that we've referred to and policies that we've referred to in drafting this scoping framework. And then after that, you've got in section part 2, last section, you've got section 6, you've got the suggested range of witnesses to be called, both internal and external. Also the possibility of suggestions for site visits in section 7, and also in section 8, of course, our approach that we're going to take to community engagement and consultation. There is also a suggested timeline on the last page, which speculates up to 6 meetings, with the last of those being in July 2021. So the purpose of this meeting is principally to review this scoping framework, take any comments and vote on the content of the framework, and also to agree a broad timeline and perhaps the dates of the next 2 meetings as a kind of starter for 10. So with that, I invite members of the panel to indicate if you wish to speak or address a question to any of the officers present. So would anyone like to indicate, please? By turning on your video. That Tim, Councillor Lunnan. You might be muted, I'm not sure.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bob, Councillor Lanza. There's quite a wide-ranging start point. I don't quite know where to start. I mean, I've read all the report, and I would say it was a very well-written, impressive report. So I'd like to sort of say well done to the officer who wrote that report for such an interesting report, specifically on our different sections. I mean, I think I just wanted to say from the off, it is very clear, having been around lots of the parades, that they are more than just a row of shops. They are, for the most part, the centres of the communities where they operate. You know, people come there and meet friends and families there. And that asset is not necessarily measurable in financial terms, but I think it should. I'd be very surprised if anybody at the council is in disagreement that they are a key part of what makes a neighbourhood a neighbourhood, and I imagine we'll all be keen to support their continuation. It sort of does go hand in hand, because obviously where a parade, you know, we want a parade to be successful, both to enhance the community but also to bring money in. So we're, you know, as a council, we should be fully behind. There'd be no reason for us not to see the parades operate as successfully as possible. I mean, having read through the sort of the scoping bits of the document, I can't particularly see anything that I disagree with. As I say, I've read all the report and thought it was a very good report, so I'm happy to crack on. Whether we need quite as many meetings as is possibly laid out, I wasn't necessarily certain that 6 would be fully necessary, but obviously you might want to put dates and diary in. We'll go from there, but I don't quite know what will fill up all those 6. I don't know whether the chair and the officers have an idea. I guess that would be my question.
Thanks, Councillor Lunnan. I think your point about the number of meetings is that we could just later in this meeting agree the next 2, and as you say, you see how it flows. I think witness sessions can take up a fair amount of time. But thank you for your comments on the report. I agree with you. I think the officers did a great job in putting this together. So can I ask any other members of the panel would like to comment on the scoping framework, please? Councillor Peck. Yeah, I think you're muted, Councillor Peck.
There we go. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lanza. The report is very thorough, and I think it does us proud that every nook and cranny has been covered. The parades in general have become a very valid resource, not just for the council, but more importantly for the residents who live in and within the area that use these parades for meeting their friends, and also of using the facilities. And I think I will probably echo what Councillor Lunnan is with regards to how many meetings that we require to undertake such further meetings. I mean, having read the report in its entirety, there's nothing that I see that I could add to it, and I commend the officer who has written it. Definitely done a very, very good job. And I think going forward, and I think, you know, there's a lot of potential to do things with the parade, and to make it a great meeting point for the residents in the ward that they reside. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peck, for your contribution on that and for your feedback on the report. Would any other member like to say anything else at the moment? No, I'm not seeing anything. Councillor Ayling?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the same thing, really. I'm happy to agree this report. I mean, the report is really covers everything, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ayling. I just had a few comments I'll make, and then invite anyone else to respond on them. But I did feel that, well, I very much agree with your comments on the report itself. It might be, if we look at the witness proposals on page 7 under external, I think there could be merit though in inviting a witness from another council with the kind of Newtown neighbourhood parade background, just to see how they approach this matter with their neighbourhood parades, because clearly we're one of many new towns. So I just throw that in there as a comment. And also I think the importance in section 8 on community engagement proposals of, as best we can, preparing a proposal for what I would call a multi-channel communication, so that we reach as many people as we possibly can. And yeah, those would be my 2 comments on the scoping framework. Does any member want to feedback on those? That idea of perhaps having a witness from another council and also having a kind of multi-channel consultation, or would you be happy with those additions? Councillor Peck.
Thank you. I think it's always a good idea to have maybe for someone from outside to give their views, and I think that probably helps us to have a better understanding and to come together with ideas. I think 2 brains is always better than 1, and so I would support to have an external, someone from outside, to come and speak and give us their ideas. I think that's a positive rather than a negative.
Thank you, Councillor Peck. Councillor Lunn.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, I slightly inwardly vomit at the term multi-channel, but that is the modern parlance for how we describe such things. But nevertheless, yeah, you know, if we can find somebody with a similar parade setup, similar neighbourhood setup, and they can give their opinion, it'd be certainly interesting to hear, or see if they've had any similar strategies or reports, so we can cross compare those. And then also, you know, it might be that, as well as having a web survey, we can have some advertisements around the parades at the time to highlight people and get them into those surveys. So more is better, obviously. However, whatever format you take or channel you use. Okay,
thanks for that. Well, of course, there's also the community notice boards, which are quite a traditional mechanism. So, yeah. Councillor Ayling.
Yeah, I just thought it might be good to get somebody from outside another area, just to sort of see whether or not we can encourage other vendors to rent spaces, so that it's not all just takeaways, and so make it that it's more user friendly.
Thanks, Councillor Ayling. Thanks for his support on that point. Now, I just to follow up. I mean, we've got an expert team of officers present, so I think just take the opportunity to pose a few questions to them. So, and this question I'm going to ask now, I think it would be useful to have almost as a standing item for the panel, which is, I suppose it's to Sue Bader really, is a general question about the current level of vacancies, because this is a kind of moving situation, even since this report was produced, and the level of demand. If I could bring in Sue Bader on those points, please.
Hello, yes. Yes, as Councillor Lanza says, the vacancy situation always is a moving feast. We've currently got, I suppose, 3 units vacant. 2 of those are under offer. One is due to complete very shortly, with the tenant moving in early January, and the other one is also under offer, again with the tenant potentially moving in mid-January. So that would leave 1 unit vacant, which is actually 1 unit in Tilgate Parade, where we're currently doing the necessary works to the unit prior to putting it on the market to let. But yes, we have found that our units do go fairly well when we put them to the market. We've recently let one on Furnace Parade. We had another small unit on Gossips Parade, and they were let fairly quickly. We don't have a huge void scenario on our parades, and when we do get one back, they do let fairly quickly. The time often taken is actually the time taken to put the property into repair, so that we can let it in repair to a new tenant. and that's often people will see a shop empty for quite a while. It's not because we can't find a tenant, it's because we're needing to put it into repair such that we can then attract the right tenant.
Well, thank you for that response. It might surprise some people, indeed, that response, considering we're in a pandemic. But I'll bring in Councillor Lunnan, please.
Thank you. So, I mean, I guess my obvious follow-up question is, and my concern is, how many of the parade shops at the moment might be in rent arrears? You know, we might not have got the full swathe of shops that have been negatively affected. And my other follow-up question is, especially with reference to Appendix D, which I read with great interest, are we finally getting our pie and mash shop in Crawley? I've seen that we've now been waiting almost 5 years for a pie and mash shop, and I'm intrigued as to why they've been waiting so long.
Thank you. Sue Bader.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, we have got a higher arrears situation now than we would have had there not been a pandemic. We are having to work with the tenants in terms of payment plans, such that we can recover arrears. And I have to say the tenants are really stepping up to the mark, and are making the best efforts that they can. I mean, we are obviously concerned with some of the tenants because some of the hairdressers and the beauty salons have had to be closed for a considerable period of time. But as I say, it is a case of working with the tenants such that we can recover the arrears over a period of time.
Thank you, Sue. And Karen Hayes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Over the period, we have actually paid out a significant amount of business grants to businesses in Crawley, including the parades. I just wanted to make the panel aware that we're also able to pay out business grants to businesses that were closed during the November 2nd lockdown, and the take-up has been quite low. So please pass on to businesses that you're aware of that they can apply for these grants. That's for businesses that were closed, they were mandated to close. But in addition to that, we've got a discretionary scheme where we can pay money out in grants to businesses that were significantly affected by the pandemic. So the footfall is a lot less than they normally get. But yes, we have paid out a significant sum in business grants to a lot of properties on the parades. Thank you.
So Karen, for anyone watching, is there a kind of link we can quote?
If you go onto our website and type in coronavirus, there's a link there for businesses, and it tells you about the different grants that we can pay. There will be a new grant next week for the wet pubs, so pubs that cannot open because they do not sell food. So all the time we're adding new grants to the system. It is funded by government, so I do encourage people to apply, please.
Do you think a note, an email to all members inviting them to promote would be a good idea then?
I shall get that done this evening.
Please, thank you very much with those links.
Thanks.
Thanks. Councillor Ayling, please.
Can that information be put on the notice boards on the parade?
Thank you, Councillor Ayling. I think that's a really good idea. Karen Hayes.
It can, but I'm just thinking about the logistics of how we get that done.
I mean, conventionally, what we do, we can send. There's two ways, aren't there? We can send an email to members with a printable document that they can pin into the notice boards, and we can post. But I know a lot of members would probably be able to print it. I mean, I do print locally and put them on the notice board. Yeah.
I'll get that done tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, just another question I had. Well, comment really. A while back, the Crawley Observer Facebook page invited comments on the neighbourhood parades, and I had a look at these. And what was also apparent, as well as what's in the scoping framework, were concerns around antisocial behaviour and allegations of drug dealing, as well as antisocial behaviour. So I'm wondering, I'm going to suggest that in terms of an additional internal witnesses, we might get somebody from community services, community wardens as well, to comment on that, given that our residents, when they have the opportunity, express that concern. If I could have any feedback on that suggestion from member colleagues. If I don't get it, I'll assume you're okay with it. Councillor Lunnan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I have to admit, most of my experience around Broadfield, Barton Parade, which obviously isn't in the scope of this review because it's privately owned, there is antisocial behaviour. At the same time, we have to be sort of clear when we note it, where we are responsible as a council, and also where the police are responsible, and where we need to be trying to get the police, more actively involved. I think from what I've seen, we've mostly got a new set of PCSOs, so it could be a good chance to try and raise awareness to them if they're not already aware of what the issues are in their particular neighbourhoods as well.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Lunn, for that suggestion. I'm sure that's a good idea as well. Okay, I think I can't see anyone else indicating on the scoping framework, so we've got a few minor additions there, but I picked up that there was a general consensus on it. But where we are now, all panel members have had the opportunity to speak, so we now need to move to a vote to agree the scoping framework as amended in our discussions. So a recorded vote will be taken by the Democratic Services Officer, and panel members will be called on to vote in alphabetical order. Once you are live, please unmute your microphone and state whether you're for or against, or if you abstain. I will move the recommendation to the vote. So I'm moving that now, that we adopt the scoping framework as amended in discussion. And could the Democratic Services Officer please conduct that vote? Councillor Lunnan, did you have a comment before the vote? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, very, very quickly. On the key objectives for review, there's no, I guess, mention of the council's current financial situation due to COVID. Now, when this was first brought up, the council maybe had more financial flexibility, I would say. Sort of a year ago, there was more scope for financial decisions to be made. My impression, I think probably most councils would agree, is that there is possibly less financial flexibility within the council at the moment. I'm sure the head of finance would probably agree with that. Thing we need to be considering at all times in this review.
I mean, Councillor Lunn, I think it's a good point. I mean, how about a form of words to meet that need? It'd be something like, as a key objective to review, in framing any recommendations, to consider the financial position of the council.
Yeah, that sounds
to that effect. Would that be fair? Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe reference, especially in a post-COVID world, if we are post-COVID.
Yeah, sure. We can put in a frame of words to reflect that. Yeah, okay. Can we please go to the vote? Thanks. On the scoping framework.
Thank you. Just to note, on the key objectives of the review section, the final bullet point, what effect of the coronavirus pandemic on retail, we can just amend that as discussed to incorporate the financial element Lands and Lennon.
Thank you for that suggestion. Yes, that would work well, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we'll now move to the vote on agenda item 3, agreement for scoping framework as amended. Panel members are asked to vote for, against, or by way of abstention. So, Councillor Ayling, please could you turn on your cameras and declare your vote?
I agree with the scope with the alterations that we have discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lanza.
I'm in favour. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Lunham.
I'm in favour. Thank you.
And Councillor Peck.
I'm in favour.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that scoping framework is approved. Thank you, members, for doing that. We now move on to item 4 on the agenda, which are the dates of future meetings. As discussed, we'll just take, based on your feedback this evening, we'll just take the first 2. So the next item of business is to agree those dates. Can panel members please ensure they have their diaries to hand? And I'm going to hand over to the Democratic Services Officer to propose some dates based on the Council's calendar of meetings. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we do have some dates coming up. The proposal is that the next meeting will be held in February 2021, with subsequent meetings held roughly on a monthly basis after that. As mentioned previously, 6 meetings is kind of the standard for scrutiny panels, but if there is not a need for that many meetings, then it's also possible to have a shorter timescale. So as the chair mentions, we will now just agree the dates of the first 2 meetings. So I have a few suggestions for the next meeting. If councillors could please indicate by turning their cameras on if they are not available. So we have, the first suggestion is Thursday the 28th of January. If you are not available, please could you turn your camera on that date. These are all at 6:30 p.m. Okay, I'm not getting any Councillor Lunnan. Okay, no problem. So the next possible date, Tuesday the 2nd of February. Okay, there's been no indication for Tuesday the 2nd of February, so if that is agreed, then we will have that as our second meeting day.
Okay, well, thank you, members and officers, for that. Then we move to the next one after that. So the next meeting would be looking at Thursday the 11th of March. Please could members of the panel indicate if that's not suitable. Okay, again, I'm getting no indication from members, so we'll go with that provisionally. And if anything changes in the meantime, okay, it doesn't seem like it, so we'll go for Thursday 11th of March for the 3rd meeting of the panel. Okay, thank you, Jess, for doing that. Again, thanks members and officers for agreeing the dates of the next 2 meetings, and I'd also like to thank our wider audience for watching this evening. And with the business of the scrutiny panel meeting concluded, the meeting is now closed at 7:04 p.m. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.